Hello again. It is 12:59. Better never than late. That's what I always say. Now I just like to show up so people have a chance to get on here. And it is officially fall. So now if you want to have a pumpkin spice whatever, go ahead. Like you needed my permission anyway. I would just taunt you and mock you otherwise. We're going to give it just a minute, give people a chance to show up. And again, as usual, you can watch this later. Feel free to share this with whoever. We're going to give you some tips today. Some of them you may already be familiar with. Some of it might be new stuff. But I've found that even if I'm familiar with a concept, it's good to have it reinforced because my memory is really good. It's just short. And it's the way, I study the Bible a lot, and sometimes I need to read the same scripture 30 times before finally it sinks in. And I think that's probably one of the reasons I think there are going to be a lot of people with flat foreheads when we get to heaven. It's going to be like, oh, now it finally makes sense. But I'm going to take one last sip of coffee. Why? Because it's coffee. But I just want to take a few minutes. I'm not one for doing super long, whether it be a video or a group or, speaking, because it's too much to remember everything. So if we just keep it to a few minutes, I would rather you have a couple of things that you can take with you, that you understand the concept and you can start using and applying right away, rather than overload you with information and then we won't retain enough of it. So let's go ahead and get started. And these are questions, responses to questions that we've heard over the years, that other people have been through similar situations, although your situation is unique to you. There's been some similarities. So, someone said, I don't think I'll ever get over the death of, my spouse, my son, my daughter, my mother, or father. What do you suggest I do? Well, if that ain't a big, loaded question, first we need to understand that the death of a loved one isn't something that we overcome. So we need to make sure that we understand what the goals are. Death is like this, and maybe this is a good way to explain it. I have a cousin who, not all that long ago, due to diabetes and some other issues, had to have a foot amputated. Now he's doing well, has just a great attitude. Physically, he's doing a lot better. But death is sort of like an amputation. You don't just grow a new limb or a new foot or whatever's been amputated. You learn how to live with where you're at. He's not going to grow a new foot, but he's learning how to live with that loss, and he's doing quite well, and that should be the goal. So how do we live with our loss and our change of situation in a healthy way? That needs to be your focus instead of simply trying to move past your loss. Because I'll give you a hint. You never will move past it totally. You'll manage it. And you'll have some successes with that. But you love someone, you're not just going to move past it. So think of it like that amputation. But in his case, he's happy right now. I mean, to talk to him, he has joy. He's an encouragement to others. Yep, it stinks. He lost a foot, but he's doing well in spite of that, because he allowed his priorities to change and his goals to change, to live with that loss in a successful, healthy way. Another question. This one I really want us to pay attention to. Someone says, I've never told anyone this, but I feel suicidal at times. I have those thoughts because how can I live without? Whether, it was a husband, a wife, which is where, I quite often hear that, but I also talk to people who have lost a child, and that's just one of the hardest things to even imagine. How can I live without this person? I can't go on, and I have these suicidal thoughts. Well, first, I appreciate the honesty, because many people feel that way. It's not all that uncommon, even years after the loved one dies. Here's my advice. First, you need to seek help now if you're having those thoughts. Here's the hard part. Be completely honest about your feelings. Don't wait. Excuse me. I'm declining a phone call on here. If it'll get away off my screen. There we go. Be honest about your feelings. Don't wait for that. Don't just assume that someone knows how you feel. Don't assume that they know you feel this way, whether it's your doctor, whether it's family members. You got to be open and tell them everything, including that you have those thoughts. Because the truth is, people want it. People really do want to help, even when we don't see it. They really do. So that's, if you're having those thoughts, do that now. Tell someone, and just be honest with them. And they're not going to ridicule you or berate you. It doesn't mean that every time that's in an emergency thing, but it's something that you can't ignore. It needs to be dealt with, because it won't just go away on its own. And there is a healthy way to move forward. Another question. And I hear this a lot. My best friend was there for me before my loved one died. They no longer talk to me and avoid me. Why can't my friends support me? Why aren't they there? That's a rough one. That's a rough one for many reasons. There are layers to this. One, death changes you. When I can guarantee you, you are not the same person you were before you lost a loved one. So it does change the person that you were before the loss. Your friend may simply not be able to relate to you now. It's an unfortunate thing, because this is another loss for you, on top of the death that you've had to experience. Best thing to do is have a heart-to-heart conversation with that person and ask the friend, is there something that I did to create this distance? Be honest. You can tell your friend, man, I need your support. More often than not, 99% of the time, that's going to solve the issue right now. See, remember, some people aren't comfortable around grief. They don't want to do anything, or they're afraid that if they say the wrong thing, they're worried about reminding you of that loss, and they don't want to do that. So reassure them. I always, most people I think are this way. When we've lost someone, we don't get to talk about them enough. I want to talk about that person. It brings me peace. It brings me joy to go back and share experiences. That just brings in a whole flood of healing when I can talk about the person comfortably, openly, with someone who I know has my best interest at heart and really sincerely is concerned. So have that conversation with your friend. We just got a couple more here. Here's one. And I've heard this myself. My doctor wants me on medication, and I don't want to. What should I tell them? Well, first off, have a conversation with your doctor. Now, I know, look at my parents, for an example. We're part of the population that if the doctor says something, you don't question it. You just go by whatever they say without fail. Don't dare have a conversation. Your doctor's sort of like that friend. They need to know what you're feeling. Tell them why you're reluctant. I tell you what, the doctors of nowadays, my experience is, and everyone I know, and I know a lot of physicians, boy, they're not like the doctors of yesteryear, in that they want to have that conversation, that dialogue with you. They want to help. See, the word doctor means teacher. I'm a doctor, not a medical doctor, but I teach. I mean, that's what it means. So they get a chance to actually teach, and the more information they have, the better solutions that they can offer. I've only had one in my whole life negative experience with an old-time doctor, and this is not someone you would know. This was many years ago. I didn't live here, so you wouldn't even know who this person was. I don't even know if they're still in practice. And I had a running injury. Man, my foot was hurting, something terrible. So I go in, they do x-rays, and puts the X. I'm in the office, and he puts the x-ray up on the lighted thing. He says, well, you got a broken bone in your foot. Well, that's really not what I wanted to hear. I was hoping he would say, just take a couple of ibuprofen or whatever, and you'll be better in a couple of days. Put some ice on it. But that wasn't going to be the case. So I didn't respond to him too much, other than I think I said, oh, well, that sucks. So he starts getting a needle ready. Okay, now you've got my attention when you pull out a needle. And I'm a question asker. I'm all for whatever, if a physician wants to do something, I just want to know why. It needs to make sense to me. I don't need medication just to make me feel like you're doing something. And I said, are you putting together cortisone? And he said, yes, I am. And I said, well, that doesn't do anything for soft tissue, or for a broken bone. That's for soft tissue. And he got mad at me. He said, well, you need to figure I know more about this than you. Okay, now at that point, I realized I was dealing with an old-time ego. And unfortunately, I probably didn't respond in the best way. I said, well, I figured you knew a little something, or I wouldn't be paying you $100 to sit in this chair. And he continues to get the needle ready. Now, here's the weird thing. I had just read, and it's a coinkydink, I had just read a study the day before from U of M on the use of cortisone, what it does to muscle tissue and things like that. Now, I've had cortisone on my shoulder, and it was very successful. So I'm not anti-cortisone. I just wanted to know why. I said, I just read this study, actually yesterday, a U of M study. He got mad, took off his gloves, threw them on the thing. He says, will you go research it out and let me know, when you want to do something about this? And again, I responded totally improperly. I says, you know what? Go clip that old lady's toenails in there. And that was the last time, again, this was don't try to figure who it was, because I didn't live here, and this was a lot of years ago. That was the only time. I've had so many good experiences. In fact, after my recent stint in the hospital this summer, I've spent some time around doctors, and my family doctor wanted to try some medication. So I brought up a concern that I had about it. Not that I'm trying to talk him out of it, that I just wanted to know, why are we doing, what we're doing? He was extremely receptive to that. That's usually the case. He says, you know what, that's a good, if you're not comfortable, let's try this instead. We'll give this a couple of weeks. And we did, and everything worked fine. My point is, if your doctor wants to put you on medication, have an honest conversation. Reveal what you're really thinking. Why is it that you're worried about that? Why is it that you don't want to take the medication? Sometimes, more often than not, we find out that, our reasons, there's an answer to them, in a good answer, because they wouldn't be recommending medication if it wasn't going to help, because their goal is to help. And I would also ask them, do you think that there's a chance of me getting better or progressing without the medication? That's an honest question. And have that discussion. Don't be afraid to have the discussion with your doctor. Again, every doctor that I know is more than willing to have that discussion with you, and you will feel much better, much safer about your options. So do that. Don't just automatically decline. Let's go with one more question. And this is, I hear this all the time. It's been years since my loved one's death. Why don't I feel better? Well, unlike a physical injury, if I sprained my ankle, they could say with pretty good accuracy, okay, you need to be off your feet for X amount of time within this many weeks or whatever. You're going to feel better. So let's do that. And it's not a physical injury. It's not something that we can just put a timestamp on. And you know what? When I do, and I'm going to relate this back to the medicine, because someone has used this excuse with me before. Well, that's just a crutch. When I hurt my foot, I needed a crutch. Didn't plan on living on that crutch forever, but there was a time I needed to rest my foot and let the healing take place. So I used a crutch. When I was done, I got rid of the crutches. So medicine can be the same way. Therapy can be the same way. Just because maybe you're encouraged to go to therapy. I've done it myself. It wasn't a lifelong thing, but I went to someone who knew more about this than I did for a time, sort of using it as that crutch to help me progress. So there's no typical rate of healing for grief. Healing often takes place in very small increments. So small sometimes we don't even realize until we look back that some healing has taken place. So when you look at your life, I bet you there are times since that loss, no matter the time frame, where even only for a moment, you did feel a little bit better. I bet you there are moments where you even laughed. I bet you there are times when you were able to focus, and this could be just for moments, on something other than the loss, other than the grief. So when you look back at these smaller moments, what will happen is you will realize that you have made some progress. Cut yourself some slack. Give yourself a break. It's not going to happen overnight, and however long it takes, there's help available for you. You don't just get rid of us that easy, because we understand that this is a journey. It's not a step. Now, there may be steps along that journey, but this is your path. And if you look back, you'll find, even if right now you're feeling absolutely terrible about it and you can't see the trees for the forest, but if you look back, you're gonna notice, if you really think about this, you're gonna find some times where you did have moments of success. And what will happen is those moments of success, allow them to do their work, will be more frequent, and the bad times will get a little bit farther apart. I've heard it said this way. Many people say it's like the waves coming in at the beach. And, sometimes it comes in waves, but there are times when, we'll be able to say to the storm, peace, be still. So that's my wish for you today. You can always, contact us, at Blue Water Hospice. If you need help, there are many people there, including myself. Social workers be more than honored to help you or to have a conversation with you. If you got questions, you can email me. I'll use this one because it's easier to remember, bobthechurchbuilder@gmail.com. We'll be glad to help. So, until we talk to you again, my wish for you is have a good rest of your day and peace.